Welcome. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. We're in the Media and Entertainment for Mobile session of the USC Marshall School of Businesses, I think for the RUI. So today we're going to talk about some really interesting trends. I don't know how many people Saturday were out picking up their iPads and standing in line. But one of the things that struck me as kind of interesting, one of the people sitting in line in front of me was a 12-year-old girl, and her mom was with her there, and she was reading a paperback book. I just thought that was kind of an interesting setup for what we're going to talk about today, about how the digital world is in complete and utter evolutionary period right now. And so we're seeing things that once were are now changing very, very rapidly. And so if you go back to that example of the girl reading the book, and I asked her mom, how many books a month does your daughter read? And she says, well, she reads about 12 books a month. And I go, well, does she buy those books or go to the library? A little bit of combination of both. And so it's just kind of interesting there. You start thinking about how this one little device impacts so much of the ecosystem, from libraries to paper mills to all these other areas that touch now that consumers are going more and more all digital. So you're seeing, the music industry over the last 3 or 4 years has been impacted dramatically by the iPod and other music devices. You've seen the publishing industry now just completely revolutionized with the Kindle and now the iPad. And you see all kinds of other businesses. So it's not just limited to some of the media entertainment properties. You're seeing government, healthcare, all attaching to these devices. And so the word, we talked today about the word mobile, but really it's not just your old cell phone. That's not just what we're talking about. We're really talking about how the internet is going to devices, and these devices are becoming incredibly portable. And so throughout the session today, you'll see an email on the screen there. Feel free to email questions, and we're going to have a lot of Q&A time at the end there to answer those questions. So let's get it started. So the first thing that's really, I think, the big trend when you talk about these connected devices is that it's not that people are going away from media and entertainment content and vanishing. In fact, the audience has never been larger. And traditional media is actually having somewhat of a halo effect from this engagement. So everybody's probably heard of the term, the long tail of content. The new term kind of is the 10-foot blue tail of content. So the big media events like Avatar, the Super Bowl, Tiger Woods' return to the Masters today, are all evidence of big things getting even bigger because so many people are tweeting about them, Facebooking about them, talking about them. So the media content or the media event is now kind of an anchor tenant, if you will, in this ecosystem of consumer thought and consumer attention and consumer awareness. So it's becoming very, very important, that digital right, that ability not just to control and broadcast one way, but really to orchestrate a conversation amongst the consumers. And so companies are really trying to figure out not how to only monetize the 1-hour TV broadcast, but to really how to monetize that community that happens weeks after that broadcast has already occurred. And so you see an interesting stat here where that ancillary audience around that broadcast is actually bigger in terms of time spent than the actual physical broadcast itself. And so that is kind of a really unique trend that we need to think about. The next one is, there's a big debate out there. You've probably heard terms like TV everywhere and TV versus the internet. And I know we're talking about mobile today, but one of the killer apps on mobile is definitely video. And so what is TV versus the internet? I think really what TV versus the internet is this audience engagement time is gravitating towards the connected consumer very rapidly. And so what happens is ad budgets tend to trail anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And so what's happening is the ad agencies and media buyers are seeing that their awareness times, engagement times, are migrating to other platforms. The spend on the advertising hasn't quite caught up there yet. And so budgets are getting allocated for future ad campaigns more and more towards this digital content. And so those budgets are going to start flowing into areas like interactive video, mobile, and some of these other digital properties. And so while the market today might be nascent versus the opportunity that maybe traditional television offers, is rapidly catching up, and the media buyers and the savvy media buyers especially are really starting to focus more of their budgets in this new media world. And so 3 or 4 years ago, you probably couldn't really get the interest of a major media buyer to do something significant online unless you're one of the kind of destination properties. Today that's changing very quickly as many of the destination properties are sold out, and the media buyers are looking to capture this awareness and niche audiences and other things. And so they're taking out and shopping with their dollars to third parties, applications, and even trying new models that we'll talk about a little bit later. The next piece that I think is just a key point and why one of the things the internet does so well for marketers and studios and everyone else is it's not just a one-way conversation, it's a two-way conversation. And so we're now just starting to see in the last couple of years many of the big brands and things start to really try to figure out how to understand all the data that gets generated. And there's no doubt in my mind that that data, that ability to connect with the consumer, understand the consumer preferences, see how the consumer is watching, what they are watching, what they're not watching, when, where, how much, answering all those kind of marketing questions that you've always wanted to know. It really is a powerful tool to have perfect insight. And so I think there's some companies out there that do a really amazing job of understanding how valuable this data is. And so Google obviously has made some really interesting acquisitions around AdMob, which had a lot of analytics on the mobile platform. They just recently bought another company for their analytics capability in episodic. So Google really understands, it gets this, that understanding how much valuable this data is. So I'll give you an example. You have a video on YouTube, and let's say you're a software company like Autodesk, and you put up some tutorial videos on Autodesk, on YouTube. Google can tag that user now and say, hey, this user is now interested in CAD software maybe, or 3D tools. And then some other site where there's AdSense, all of a sudden that user can get targeted, instead of just a generic ad, can now get targeted something that's high value, like purchase our new software for CAD drawings, or even a competitive offering for some other type of CAD software. So what Google's doing here is creating $1 billion market and really understanding the consumer based upon all this analytics they're driving. So Google's done a very, very good job of getting their analytics tools very, very wide. So many sites use Google Analytics. They use their different ad products. And so Google gets a little piece of all that data. And they're really optimizing ads and how ads work. And so I use them as kind of a shining star. But for other companies, I think there's some very, very good examples there. People are starting to embed analytics in their mobile platforms and tie that back into their web platforms. So, always think about how you're going to get all this data back into one universe. And you can start comparing how much of my audience engaged on just one platform like mobile, or how much of my audience engaged on multiple screens. And so these types of advanced analytics are just now starting to come to fruition. You have companies like Time Warner and AOL who for years have had really robust analytics capabilities. So they're very far ahead and thought of some really neat things to do with the data. But really every company now that's going to have a mobile strategy, one of the key pieces of going to all this effort of deploying applications and websites that are optimized for mobile is to really get that consumer voice. And you're going to get new forms of data that are even that you couldn't get before. So for instance, there's a big term out there that you might want to do some research around called location-based services. So things where, like Foursquare, where you can check into restaurants and let people notify that you're there. The Twitter applications now are geo-aware. Mobile doesn't just tell you that you're in a state or a DMA, it tells you a very precise location of where that consumer is. So start thinking about how valuable that data is, that you can actually start to see foot traffic patterns, usage, what people are doing when and where. You get a level of insight of the consumer that you've just never really had the opportunity to get before. And it's not limited to large corporations and billion-dollar enterprises. Pretty much anybody at this point, for a very modest budget, can now make their applications consumer and data aware and start taking your piece of that optimization and revenue from collecting analytics and data.